I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual. 起立，面向佛堂，参加先鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，参加各位的传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。
Today I want to chat just a little bit about sorting out what's really important from the urgent. It's a topic that bears some discussion now and again, and believe it or not, something that Lao-Tzu actually has something to say about. And we'll get to that here just in a moment. However, in advance of starting that discussion, a couple of public service announcements or disclaimers. Okay, the first one is this. While we're going to talk about the proper and appropriate place of the things of the world in our lives, I'm not by any means suggesting that anyone should sacrifice, shortchange, or not vigorously pursue and their families. There is will of want and poverty and lack and neglect, and we're not even going to talk about going there. So when we talk about the proper place for the things of the world, the secular pursuits, understand that that's not a discussion on deprivation, but a discussion on appropriateness. Okay. Secondarily, there's the proper place for one's spiritual pursuits, along with the conduct of our lives. And I understand, and I think most of us probably do, but just in case, I'm going to say this anyway, that our spiritual responsibilities, our duties to our cultivation and to the temple where we have those, and to ourselves as regards our cultivation, typically require a lot less time than our secular responsibilities, but they're no less important and deserve the same level of attention and the same sort of rigorous discipline that we would apply to anything else that we're doing. And so, that being said, okay, let's kind of jump into what's important and what isn't. We spend an awful lot of our lives chasing down what we believe to be important, when what we believe to be important really is only the urgent. And sometimes what we're chasing isn't even so much pressing as it is impressed upon us. When we stop and think about what it is in our lives that has importance to us, in a lot of cases, what comes to mind are fame or a certain amount of celebrity, appreciation for what we do and how we do it, perhaps, or the collection of goods and wealth and possessions and what have you that we acquire over our lifetimes, or the goals and things that are hard to get our hands on, the things that we have to work extra hard to get, or our position and our perception of power and social status, things like that. The world that we live in would have us to believe that these things are the markers of success and well-being in the world. That as we acquire all of this stuff, that we have become the successful people that we ought to be. I'm not going to say that accumulating a certain amount of wealth and perhaps position and status doesn't go along with being successful. And I won't say that somebody can't have both a wonderfully successful secular life and a wonderfully refined spiritual life. Our ordained masters do that very thing. And it's a goal that all of us who are involved in cultivation of the teachings are attempting to do on a daily basis. But the pursuit of those worldly goals and affectations is not the overwhelming, all-consuming activity of our lives. Those things have a right and proper place and are pursued according to the Tao of moderation, such that we don't overwhelm ourselves with the pursuit of that which doesn't sustain us. And now I'm going to wait for my screen to respond here. Okay. It's going to be a bad day for bandwidth. It's a fundamental truth that the things of this world hold a great deal of allure for us. There are all sorts of things out there that draw our attention, kind of like several species of birds chase after shiny little baubles they find, laying around in their environment. We see something flash out of the corner of our eye, and we just have to go look at it. And it's remarkably difficult sometimes to not envy people who have attained perhaps that higher level of material success than we have. For the people that have acquired more stuff than we have, or have apparently been more successful than we have. But that comparison is an illusion. And it's very, very difficult to be content or to find contentment in a world where the competition for the toys outweighs the understanding of what's enough. It's difficult to find peace and tranquility when we're worried about what our neighbor has and what we don't have, where we're continually comparing the pile of stuff in our garage to our neighbors, where we're wondering whether or not, we've amassed a big enough pile of toys. We spend an awful lot of time worrying about what we have in the bank, what we have in the garage, whether or not our house is big enough, new enough, nice enough, whatever. Worrying about the trappings of this secular existence, almost to the exclusion of all other thought. And that really is unbelievably detrimental to both spiritual refinement and our peace and our tranquility. That sort of thinking, that envy, that emotional upheaval, that pursuit of the stuff, the toys, the wealth, the possessions, can undo our ability to be at peace with ourselves and our world. When those things become more important than having enough, than remembering the appropriate place for those things, then we begin to swing from one extreme to another, and the extremes are never healthy. Lao Tzu talks about this in chapter 4. He says, do not glorify the achiever so the people will not squabble. He says, don't treasure the goods that are hard to obtain so the people won't become thieves. Do not show the desired things so their hearts will not become confused. This is a 4-line treatise on, actually it's a 3 stanzas treatise on what we should not be doing with ourselves and our time, and the reasons why. Lao Tzu goes on to say, thus the governance of the sage empties their hearts and fills their bellies, weakens their ambitions and strengthens their bones. And he says, let the people have no cunning and no greed, so those who scheme will not dare to meddle. And wraps it up with act without contrivance, and nothing will be beyond control. There are a couple of pretty distinct sections within this chapter. But as I studied this week and began to not only pick this apart, but turn it around as a whole, I realized that Lao Tzu's admonition to the people is pointed directly at me. It's pointed at all of us. The term the people can just as easily be any one of us as it can be those who are around us. Once again, it's so very easy for us to point the finger at other people and say, well, you guys have a problem. You need to make the following life adjustments, and here's what Lao Tzu says you need to do. And for some reason, it seems to be easier for us to swallow the advice of the sages when we're able to direct it at somebody else. Unfortunately, I think sometimes when we do that, we kind of miss the point. And for some reason, this particular chapter struck home with me. It resonated with me while I was reading it, and I realized that despite the terminology, the person that Lao Tzu was talking to was me. And it is true, I spend a lot of time engaged in and agonizing over my secular pursuits, making sure the kids are cared for, my wife's cared for, the house is taken care of, taking care of my job and my responsibilities there, taking care of the never-ending pile of things that I have to do in my secular life just to keep life going smoothly. And I considered that and kind of did a real quick evaluation of whether or not those things were really occupying their proper place in my life, or whether maybe I'd let things get a little out of hand from time to time. We all do. And it's one of the reasons why it's important for us to go back every now and again and read and reread the teachings. But that being said, these days looking back, I think my secular pursuits have a much better place in my life than they used to. But still, for a moment, I was able to pause and reflect on what's really important. And I think it bears mentioning, just so that everybody has a reason to consider the same things that I did, what it is that we really need. And what's really important to us are our day-to-day survival needs. Food, clothing, shelter. Once those 3 basics are met, then we can move on from that point to higher and grander pursuits. If we can't manage to come up with food, clothing, and shelter, And it's very difficult for the human brain to consider anything else because we're too busy starving and freezing. And if you're in Indiana right now and outside, it's pretty doggone chilly. But right behind the day-to-day survival needs come the needs of the spiritual self, the need for spiritual refinement, for spiritual improvement, for understanding what it is that makes us tick, what it is that makes us go inside. That quest to understand our place in the universe. And that understanding is as important as the day-to-day needs. Along with that come the needs of other people, the needs of the community, the needs of those around us, the need to grow and demonstrate compassion and charity and tolerance and all of the wonderful things that we should be doing for each other. And those things form the path to contentment in a person's life. When all of those things exist in their proper place in the human life, then we have balance, then we can have some peace, and we understand how much is enough. That, for me, defines what I consider to be really important. So anyway, kind of to tie things up here today, those admonitions from Lao Tzu to the people are ultimately directed at us. We have to remember that as we're studying the teachings, we are the king or the sovereign or the emperor. In this case, we are the people. We are the rulers of our own lives. We have to choose what we're going to do with them and how we're going to do it. The other thing is that ending conflict and confusion in our lives is the beginning of ending conflict with others and the beginning of ending conflict in the world. And that's a fundamental tenet of our teachings. It's one of the things that we're working on trying to do the hardest, is to stop conflict in all of its permutations wherever it exists. When we have peace in our lives, then we can begin to create peace in others. Until we have peace in our own lives, there's just not a prayer. And along with that, part of Tao cultivation is discovering for each of us what really is important. While my list is generically true, my list is not everybody's list, and certainly I'm not going to attempt to dictate to anybody else what their list ought to be. But it's certainly worth taking a moment or two to stop and consider what that list is for each of us. Thank you all very much for letting me share with you today, and have a wonderful rest of your weekend.
Thank you so much, Bill. Bill, I was very interested in hearing you talk about the attitude to monetary success that you have observed at the temple over the years. In your many interactions with the Chinese Tao cultivators here, whether it's the ordained masters, Master Chen, Master William, etc., and cultivators like Peter and many others that you have befriended, I think you have always seen in them sort of a very balanced approach to this whole thing about making a living, wealth, prosperity, and abundance.
Yes, absolutely.
That's actually another cultural touchstone, Bill, where there's a bit of a gap between East and West. I find, especially after publishing the Tao of Success, I find that people oftentimes will look at the cover and then be, even without knowing anything else about it, be completely turned off, because in their minds, the Tao is not supposed to be about coins. The Tao is not supposed to be about any kind of material success. It actually takes me quite a bit of effort to let them know that listen, you think there's a separation between the spiritual or the ethereal to the materialistic, but you got to understand the Chinese people don't think that at all. They just look at it as yet another way to contribute, which is the reason why here at this temple, I mentioned the Chinese New Year celebration decorations, that the motif, the color scheme that you will see all over the place is red and gold. Red, to the Chinese, is the color of life. In the West, it's the color of warning, like, stop sign is red, red light, etc. And in the West, we usually think of green as the color of life. Why? Because of plants, leaves, forests, trees, and the green valley, the green hills, etc. So Asians have a different take on it because red is the color of blood and therefore the color of vitality. So to be pale, to be drained blood, is to be unhealthy. To have rosy cheeks is a sign that you are robust and that you possess that vitality with which to power your actions. So red is very auspicious to the Chinese, and for that reason, you can't avoid the color red when you visit a typical Chinese restaurant. It's gonna be there. Gold is the same. Gold, no big surprise. Gold is the representation of wealth and prosperity and abundance. And the more you delve into that Eastern culture, the more you realize that people don't really have a hang-up about the pursuit of that. They have a sort of a balanced approach to it. Now, the exception would be among the Buddhist clergy. This is because when you become a monk or a nun in an authentic Buddhist tradition, the head is shaved, and you have to renounce everything in the material world. Not just some parts of it, absolutely everything having to do with the material world. So if you were following the Buddhist path, then I can see, that renunciation will be incompatible with the pursuit of material goods. And that's one of the differences between the Tao and Buddhism. People often ask that question. When they go to a nightclub, like Tao the nightclub, they see Buddhas everywhere. So they're wondering, so the Buddha and the Tao, they are like one and the same, right? So there are actually some differences. The Tao cultivators have no trouble at all visualizing the acquisition, the pursuit of wealth and prosperity as an energy exchange. Energy exchange meaning that I will devote myself to a certain effort and I'm compensated with a marker for the worth of that effort that we call money. So when you penetrate beyond the symbolic superficialities of it, what lies behind is everybody coming together, exchanging energy with one another, worth for value, value for worth, etc. So when that is the case, you can see that the typical Chinese person would not have any trouble with a concept like the Tao of success. There's a term for that. It's 成功之道, Chinese, and people like to talk about it. That particular book actually did not start out being the Tao of success. I called it, when I submitted the manuscript, it was called the Tao of you. And if you have read that book, I think it will immediately make a lot of sense to you because the entire book, from beginning to end, is all about you. Your relationship with other people, your relationship with the world, your connection with your destiny, etc. So it's a Tao of you. The editor that looked at the manuscript, he's actually so he liked it. He liked it a lot. He was the person leading that division called Torture within the Penguin Group, and he also was a devoted student of Napoleon Hill. So Napoleon Hill is the author of Think and Grow Rich. So he already had this thought that this is all about success. So when he got through the manuscript, he said, Derek, let's rename the book from the Tao of You to the Tao of Success. And I'm thinking, okay, sure. Because, to the Chinese, that's very easily justified. And it makes a lot of sense. So I said, fine, that's a great idea. I'm surprised nobody else has put out a book like that. No, I know why. I'm surprised no one has put out a book like that. I'm going to make some modifications here and there to make it fit the title of the book. And that's how that book came to be. So Bill, I'm kind of going off on a tangent. I hope you don't mind.
No, it's fine.
There's actually a story from Zhuangzi. I don't know if anyone would be interested in hearing it, but it really makes that point. Remember, Zhuangzi lived 2,500 years ago. He wrote a story about the ancient emperors who dated back to like 4,000 years ago. And one of the points in that story was about the pursuits of the materialistic things, but in a very Tao-centric way. Okay.
Sure.
So, yeah, I'm getting people saying that, oh, please, tell us that story. So I will definitely comply. Before I do that, Bill, let me just give you the feedback that people have typed up. So from Alex, wonderful talk, Bill. Thank you. And
thank you.
From Julie, thank you, Bill. From Tim,
thank you.
Very wise thoughts. Bill, as always, give me a lot to ponder and contemplate. From Martin, thank you, Bill.
Thank you all very much.
And from Julie, the Tao is about all aspects of life, to include financial and spiritual cultivation. Very true. To find a balance with all things in your life is what I feel it is. Julie, you are absolutely correct.
Yes, thank you.
So the story that makes this point, just so you know that I'm not inventing this out of whole cloth, it's written by Zhuangzi 2,500 years ago, and he wrote about this ancient emperor by the name of Yao, Y-A-O, coincidentally the same as the Yao that you associate with the basketball player, but the ancient emperor is certainly a basketball player. Indeed, the ancient emperors were seen by teachers like Lao Tzu and Yao Tzu as ancient sages, that they were not just rulers, but they were wise rulers. So they were sage kings, king philosophers, philosopher kings. So Emperor Yao visited a particular area, and he saw this man. The man recognized him. This man saw that he was the emperor, he was a sage, so the man approached with a great deal of respect and said, Your Majesty, I would like to offer you 3 blessings. And the man said, I would like to offer you the blessing of longevity. To this, Yao said, I decline. And then the man said, I would like to offer to you the blessing of many sons. To this, Yao said, I decline. Okay, well, 3 blessings. We're down 2. We got 1 left. So the man is like, okay, I'd like to offer you the blessing of great wealth. And again, Yao said, I decline. So this man is surprised and exasperated and said, hey, but everybody likes these things. Everybody wants longevity and wealth and have plenty of kids. So why do you decline? And y'all explained that, well, if I have more kids, I would just have more worries and I would suffer from anxiety more. I'd be worried about them all the time. If I have more wealth, well, I would just have a lot more complexities that I need to manage. So I got to decline that as well. And if I get to live longer, well, that just means that I get to make more mistakes that embarrass me. So rather than to go through that, I would need to decline that as well. So then the man said, well, I thought that you were a sage, but now I see that you are no different from a common individual. Then the man said, if you have more sons, it only means that you have more ability to work through them to do the things that you want to do. They're sharing your mission. The heavens has given us life so we can get things done. So your sons will be an extension of that. If you have more wealth, then it just means that you have more resources that you can share with other people. So tell me, what worries or anxieties would you suffer for having more kids if they are well brought up? And what complexities would you need to manage that will not be a happy duty that you will have to take on? And then the man goes on to say that the life of a sage is about simplicity. He can enjoy himself with the simple life. He can enjoy a meal without delicacies. And when the Tao is prevalent in the world, he is happy to enjoy the world along with everyone else. When the Tao has been forgotten, he can cultivate himself in solitude. Now, many, many years from now, when he is tired of the world, perhaps he will decide to leave it. Or perhaps he will ascend to heaven on a cloud. And so tell me, what do you mean that you're going to embarrass yourself living a life like a sage? So after all this, Yao sensed that perhaps he had misspoke, that perhaps there's a great deal of wisdom that this man has. Now, this man, still not feeling really happy with the emperor, turns around to leave. So Yao chases after him and wait, but. And then suddenly the man turns around and says, with a dismissive gesture, "Be gone." And that's the end of the story from Zhuangzi. So I'd like everyone to pay attention to the part where it is almost as if this man is explaining to the people in our society that have those hang-ups about the monetary aspects and not mixing with the spiritual aspects, and then feeling like, oh, what if I have more? Then I just worry more. I just have more stress and tension in our lives. So I find that it's very interesting how timely that is, that it applies so well to the criticisms that people may have for me seeing a title like that. Whereas the man, this nondescript anonymous man that Zhuangzi wrote about, represents the voice of the Tao in pointing out that, well, listen, it's no different than anything else that you have to manage in this lifetime. You can do it really well or you can do it really poorly. It depends on whether or not you are walking the path. If you are straying from the path, it's not going to end well. If you stay on the path, you are going to enjoy yourself in that process and generate a great deal of abundance. And it's all about community and sharing the abundance with one another. And, when I think about life, that's really what it's all about. So from that perspective, I think you will see that the red and the gold, red is for health, gold is for wealth. I think the gold makes a great deal of sense in that mindset, that it's very auspicious, it's very worthwhile to pursue that. You don't need to sell your soul in pursuit of gold. You don't need to sacrifice your dignity, your ethics, your code of honor. You can still do a tremendous job accumulating resources and then sharing that resources for things that you care about, for people that you care about. How cool is that? So that's the Tao. Okay. So Bill, there's my story.
That's outstanding. I'm sorry, I went on mute. I had some background noise going on.
Okay, Bill, I'm going to go ahead and switch over to my side.
Please do.
So as everybody can probably imagine, I find that story to be very timely for Chinese New Year as well, with all the emphasis on prosperity.
let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持下3鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，3鞠躬，持下规则是一鞠躬，接班一鞠躬。Okay, everybody, we are done.
Participate in the Tao meeting by joining us online. For information, go to Taoism.net/Tao